I'm Angi Kane, associate producer of the upcoming documentary Heard from Bell Tower Pictures, featuring stories of surviving and thriving from Richmond's housing projects. One of the realities for some of the residents is incarceration. In this Zoom interview, you'll hear about Beyond Containment, a study of some of the root causes of incarceration. Iman Shabazz from the Richmond's Commonwealth's Attorney's Office and one of the organizers of the studies shares his insight into Beyond Containment. Here are the highlights from our conversation. So, Iman, first, can you describe for people who are not familiar with Beyond Containment at all what exactly it is?
It actually started in relationship to a conversation that I had with our former Commonwealth's attorney, Mike Harris. We were discussing ideas just in general about what were some of the things that needed to change systemically with regards to dealing with improving public safety or reducing crime. What we really needed to do was take a deeper analysis or a deeper dive into what those root causes really were, not what our assumptions were in terms of what those root causes were, but what we could find through gathering stories and information, of course, from community members, as well as our own research and kind of putting the two together, if you will, to come up with a clearer narrative in terms of what we were actually facing in the overall criminal justice or so-called criminal justice landscape.
Could you give a quick overview
Yes.
of the various factors that were identified as part of the study for Beyond
Right.
Containment?
This by no means was an exhaustive list, nor was it an attempt to genuinely define what those root causes were. We realized that we had to start the dialogue somewhere.
Sure.
And so when we looked at the broad, stroke, if you will, of social justice issues or social issues in general, we realized that the things that came up most were these particular categories. We wanted to take a deeper look at law enforcement in and of itself. That is including our office as well as, of course, the police and police, I'll say, interaction. We definitely wanted to look at the overall impact of race and identity in relationship to, of course, the things that, again, I believe that those who might be listening to this would be familiar with in terms of those things that contributed to mass incarceration, those things that contributed to disparate incarceration of people of African descent and other people, if you will, as people say, of color. So we wanted to look at those factors. We definitely wanted to look at the role that housing played, or more so the lack thereof of housing and the lack of access, if you will, to what people continue to call affordable housing. But that's perhaps we'll dig deeper into that as well. We wanted to look at poverty, of course, as an aspect of what impact in general did that have in terms of a person being able to just meet their basic needs in terms of their livelihood, and how that played a role in some of the things that we saw in the reason that, that led to arrests, in large and in part, again, within communities of quote unquote color. We also wanted to take a look, if you will, at health. And again, I would say argue the lack thereof of affordable or adequate health care. What role did that actually have in terms of determining certain factors with regard to the intersections of again, what we were seeing with regard to folks who would, as I would say, we'd see daily in the courthouse, as well as the overall, I guess I'll say again, lack of access to adequate health care that also contributed as factors in regards to some of the decisions folks may have made in terms of just dealing with and coping with the daily stresses, the daily uh, uh, poor health concerns,
Sure.
and the like. And so we look at we wanted to take a look. Oh, and I'm sorry, I almost forgot education. We also wanted to take a look at what role education played, particularly in regards to what people have termed as the school to prison pipeline. How were we contributing, if you will, to that, and in what ways did we need to for rather purposes deconstruct and or fall back and make a better analysis of where we were putting resources, where we were putting time and energy, and in what ways the educational environment affected our young people, so that they unfortunately became a part of this criminal justice, if you will, process as well.
Sure.
So those are the factors that we started out with, but they really were actually the result of focus groups that we held, particularly me, in the community, where they were the factors that were most prominent in the discussions that I.
Obviously, there are various issues that are touched on in Beyond Containment. I don't think we'll do them all justice in this brief conversation, but I wanted to highlight a few of them because I think they are particularly relatable for a lot of people. Could you speak a bit about educational and youth programs and what your findings were uh, with those, and what are some of the issues with those that people should be more aware of?
This is just my perspective. One of the things that I feel all too often we are discussing is a misrepresentation of what that actually is, like what education is supposed to be, right?
Okay.
So we talk about, sometimes people say, oh, well, we got to put more money into schools, or we got to put more money into education, whatever that's supposed to mean. Putting this money into what in order to produce what? If and from my perspective, if the education in and of itself is not geared towards producing students who can then in turn go into the community to resolve their own problems, then I don't know that we're actually engaging in what I would consider to be a proper mode of education. Um, when in terms of the research in and of itself, a lot of folks really point to the reality that there's a correlation, of course, between certain levels of educational, quote unquote, educational attainment and the likelihood of engaging in activity that is or isn't criminal. Well, again, this is where I kind of argue that there needs to be more, I guess, a different lens to consider, or a different shade of the conversation to consider, because when we talk about criminality, we're also generally only talking about activities and behavior that happens under specific conditions, within specific communities, and between specific people. We're not talking about the criminality that does happen on a daily basis at the larger societal level,
Sure.
be it corporate,
Sure.
be it corporate, excuse me, be it leadership, and political or elsewise. That escapes the conversation somehow, and we're only then just talking about, quote unquote, those people over there. The research reflects all of that in terms of, again, those that correlation between the likelihood of escaping that particular brand of criminality. But I would argue that what we need to even incorporate in that even more, or include in that even more, is again, just an understanding of then, well, what are we using this information for, and to what degree does this information serve to benefit our people? Does it serve to benefit our families? And does it serve to benefit us in a way that gives us the tools we need to transform our communities into what we choose to imagine?
For the people who really want to explore more of these issues, do you have a website, a URL where people can go and find more information out about Beyond Containment?
We have a Facebook page, and there are two that I will reference for folks where we have been, for other purposes, posting the Beyond Containment related
Sure.
information. And the Facebook page is Beyond Containment, the dialogue series.
Okay.
You simply go there. And then I have started a page for our office, which is Richmond Commonwealth Attorney, um, which I'm hoping will be a tie-in to not only what we do with the Beyond Containment series, but to be a space where we can actually update folks just in general about the other programs and initiatives and the reforms, if you will, that we intend to enact within the office. If someone has specific questions, I am happy to answer those questions, and you can reach me either by email, which is my full name, that is Iman iman.shabazz@richmondgov.com. You can email me anytime. You can also reach me by phone at 804-646-3542. While we are still enduring protocols in relationship to COVID-19, I can be better reached when I'm not working in the office at 804-394-5601. A lot of what we were attempting to do with Beyond Containment has really kind of been, in my opinion, catapulted
Yes.
into a completely different space. And so what we were attempting to scratch the surface on, so to speak, in terms of some dialogue that we would have engaged in terms of Beyond Containment, has really put us in a very different space right now. So the conversations moving forward will change from what we initially,
Sure, sure.
for lack of a better term, outlined. Uh, while we were, again, like I said, attempting to scratch the surface, we're now at a completely different level of awareness in terms of our urgency with a lot of these things where we don't really, I don't want to say we don't have time for, but we don't necessarily need to go back at this point to go back and recapture the dialogue in the same way we had planned, but we do still need to have dialogue. We do still need to have analytical dialogue, and we do still need to engage in resolution-oriented conversations that not only take into account some of these root causes, but then make commitments to then provide resources to genuinely transform the circumstances.
If there was a way to crystallize uh, what has been happening beyond containment, is that some of our biggest issues are very complex in their root causes. There's a tendency to want to have reductive conversations and say it's simply about one thing, when
Right,
there's so many other elements and so many other facets to why we have certain social issues. And I think this is it is a solid jumping off point. And as you said, it's not comprehensive. Uh, it's not trying to be comprehensive, but it is a starting point for people who want to start to look at contributing factors and issues, and who want to start to become better informed. I appreciate your time and the start of this conversation, and we'll make sure that the contact information is uploaded as well as with the video, so people know how to reach you, how to get more information on Beyond Containment as well. So again, thank you very much for your time.